Welcome to everybody that's joined us here in council chambers, as well as those that are joined us from home. This is a regular session meeting of the Poquoson City Council for Monday, September 28th. I'll call this meeting to order, and I'll note that our Vice Mayor is on the phone tonight due to some restrictions that he's having to follow, but he is here to join us as well. If you could all please rise, I'll lead you in the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, and thank you for the many blessings we've received in our city. As we move forward and deliberate issues that affect our employees this evening, we ask for a portion of your wisdom. As always, we ask that your presence be felt by those who serve our military and our public safety representatives as they protect all of us. And we do all of this in your Son's name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have one special presentation this evening on the docket, and Jessica Hartley, there's head of our library, and has a new employee to introduce to council.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the library's newest employee, Heather Wright. She began working at the library in March after moving back to Virginia from Central North Carolina, where she lived for the last 10 years. Her previous position was as a library assistant at Orange County Public Library in North Carolina, near Chapel Hill. She's currently enrolled in the School of Library and Information Science at the University of Southern Mississippi, also my alma mater, and plans to graduate with her master's degree next fall. She also holds a bachelor's degree in linguistics from ODU and a master's in linguistics from NC State. In her spare time, she enjoys acrylic pour painting and horror movies. And Heather says that as a Newport News native, she's excited to be living near the water again and to be working with the library in the city of Poquoson.
Okay, well, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to address council? You're welcome to.
Well, I appreciate being here and seeing all the faces here, and I'm just looking forward to working with the city and the library.
Great, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is an audience for visitors. And I'll open that audience for visitors and see if there's anybody that would like to address council. Yes, sir. Just, you can take your mask off when you're talking. Just let us know your name and
yes,
where you're
good
from.
evening, everybody. My name is Daniel Anderson. I am the new market leader for the BB&T Not Truist location here in the city of Poquoson. So as many of you know, we have underwent our location change. So we are at the 476C location. So if you had not had an opportunity to come check us out, I would encourage you all to do so. So you would see essentially all the familiar faces that you all saw at the old location. They're all at the new location. The only new face would essentially be my own. But I would love a chance to meet anyone that I haven't had an opportunity to meet in person. But essentially, I just wanted to kind of reiterate our commitment to the community, our commitment to be here long term, right? And to really start to be involved in a lot of the events that you all have go on here in the city of Poquoson. I know Dave and I have spoken already. I'm excited to get involved with, a couple of events, a couple of favorites of mine. Of course, the Seafood Festival. I understand that we're working on possibly doing that sometime shortly.
I knew Dave would get you.
But that's a favorite of mine, and I essentially I stressed to my leadership that was important to me, especially being in this community. And if it's important to me, I'm going to make sure that it's important to BB&T Not Truist. So with that, again, I look forward to working with you all in the future, and I appreciate you all letting me address you all this evening.
Well, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. I know it was a quick move, and we really appreciate that y'all are hanging around.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
All right, thank you. Anyone else would like to address the audience visitors? All right. If not, I'll close that and ask council for consideration of the minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve our minutes of our regular session of September 14th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. We approve the minutes. Just want to do, before I call the roll, I do want to do a sound check with Carrie, since I haven't heard him. Carrie, you out there?
I am. Yes, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, Evie, please.
All right.
Certainly. Thank you. Councilman Hux,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman. Thank you. Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
and Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Very well. And the work session?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of our work session of the same night.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we approve those also. Evie, please.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Freeman. Thank you. Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Councilman Hux,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
and Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
All right, very well. Next item is a public hearing, and this public hearing is for an ordinance making additional appropriations for fiscal year 2021 in the general fund for the Federal CARES Act funding, which includes hazard pay and utilization of the unrestricted fund balance. Randy, how would you like to proceed?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask Tanya to come forward and frame most of this, and then I'll finish as it relates to hazard pay and related issues.
Very well. Tanya?
Good evening, everybody. So tonight I bring forth to you an ordinance. We have to appropriate the funding that we received. The first item is $48,975 for voter registrar. They received the money from CARES funding to assist them with costs associated with PPE for their staff in order to do the voter registrar, as well as the increased absentee ballots that they're going to incur, both printing and mailing. The second item is $26,402 for the police department. They submitted a grant through the CARES Act to purchase a fogger to clean out the vehicles. Currently, the fire department is doing that for them. Now they'll have the ability to clean the vehicles out daily to make sure if there's any contaminants in there, it'll take care of it, as well as full facial mask for them. The last item is the $1,070,597. That is the second allocation that we have received for the CARES funding. As you recall, the first allocation has already been appropriated. This is the second one that we have received. We are planning on using $23,968 for power air purifier respirators for the fire department. This will go in conjunction with the self-contained breathing apparatus that was approved last city council, as well as $115,000 designated to the fleet. We need to increase our fleet for social distancing and safety for employees. It's ironic. It used to be ride sharing was the way to go. Now the CDC suggests that's not the case. So we're asking to increase our fleet. $26,449 for the school division. If you recall, in FY20, we allocated $113,000 for teleworking and teleschooling. We appropriate another $86,000 for this year, and now we're asking for another $26,449. Now, we do expect one more request to come from schools, about $86,000, but we'll bring that back to City Council at a later date. We're excited to partner up with York Poquoson Department of Social Services, offering $15,000 to fund for emergency service for our residents. This is going to help for evictions, utility cutoffs, and so forth. If our citizens are listening at home, we have a number that you can call social services once this is appropriated at area code 757-890-3787. I'll repeat, 757-890-3787. This will take our citizen to service intake, and social service will be able to assist them. Another partnership that we're excited about is the United Way of Peninsula. We're going to provide vouchers to the families of Poquoson for child care. As you know, child care is expensive currently for our citizens. Before, they were able to send them to school, and they would just have after hours. Now it's all day, basically. So we have a contact for United Way, once this is appropriated, 757-229-2222. Again, 757-229-2222. Now, again, any of these numbers, if you call the Department of Finance, we'll be able to assist you with those as well. For both of the two things I just mentioned, for social services and United Way, for funds not spent, they will be returned back to Poquoson. We also requesting $258,483 to reimburse ourselves for payroll-related expenditures. This is allowed by the guidance that the treasurer has issued. We will have some fund undesignated that we will bring back to you of $421,000, and then we have $195,000 that we're asking of for hazard pay. Randy's going to speak to that later, but I just want to make sure that's in the ordinance. So that kind of completes our care funding. We do have one remaining item which resolves to the fund balance. We are requesting $75,000 be appropriated out of general fund balance for special duty pay, which Randy will speak about.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, a couple of things before I dive into the hazard pay. The special welfare fund money that we're asking you to appropriate this evening for social services is money that they use at intake for folks that are in crisis that may not fit neatly or traditionally into any of their other programs. It has the most flexibility of all the money that they use in social services, and so we would strongly support that. Additionally, the social services does provide some child care support for some of the folks that qualify, to differentiate that with the United Way program, which is designed to be more flexible and to be potentially available to a larger group of people. So those things, they don't conflict with one another, they build on each other. With regard to the item before you this evening, I know it's kind of an unusual title, but we made the decision to specifically insert the hazard pay in there, and also to include the mix and match of the CARES Act appropriation with the general fund transfer, so it's all in one place, and the people knew exactly what we were doing. And with that, let me run through the principal recommendations here. In recognition of the inherent risks of public service and serving the public and the challenges that come with it during a COVID-19 public health emergency, as well as the special challenge that comes with being a small workforce in a small city. We have put forward several recommendations regarding hazard pay. They have different names, and it's really to differentiate for the purpose of discussion the items. The first is a CARES Act eligible funded public safety, sworn public safety hazard pay supplement. And the way we calculated all of these is based on the 10 months that are part of the federal CARES Act time period of eligibility. And the amounts that I'll talk about all assume that that employee that would be eligible is working now or will work for us between now and the end, and that they'll have worked 10 months. So if a person only worked 3 months, you scale it down. So we built it out and then we built it back up. But the essential recommendation is to utilize CARES funding in the amount of approximately $150,000 to provide a $2,500 hazardous duty pay supplement for sworn public safety employees. So that's police, fire, EMS. And again, if they were eligible for all 10 months, it would be $2,500, and we would pay that, assuming that you approve it this evening. Our anticipation is that we would pay that by the end of this week, and we would essentially catch up the months we've already realized and advance the few remaining months. If anyone were to leave unexpectedly, we would simply take that out of their last paycheck. But for our public safety employees, there are 56 that we estimate that would be eligible. That incorporates vacancies and other things. And we would ask you for your consideration of that. Second, we have an additional group of people, public works people, people in fleet, the people that our citizens would see working the Saturday convenience sites, those that are our employees, the building inspection department, and others that we feel clearly falls also within the definition of eligibility of CARES Act. And for those people, we are recommending utilizing CARES Act funding for those 29 people, which is approximately $46,000, to provide a $1,500 benefit, again, based on a 10-month eligibility. And that we call that the General Government Hazard Pay Supplement. Those two together represent what we believe to be the eligible CARES Act expenditures for this type. And again, that's for 56 positions and 29 positions. So there is a remaining portion of our workforce. The remaining portion of our full-time workforce is 43 positions. And again, being very small, we are all working with each other all the time. And it is impossible or very difficult to separate out the workforce. So my recommendation to you is that we utilize the general fund balance to provide the same level of special supplement. We call it special duty pay supplement, so as to be able to differentiate that between the other two, in the amount similar to that second group. So for a 10-month eligible employee, also $1,500. So essentially, all of the permanent full-time employees would be eligible either under that first group, which is sworn public safety only, and then group 2 and 3, although the funding sources are different, the supplement in the end is the same. And then lastly, there is a recommendation relating to part-time employees. The recommendation here is to provide what would essentially be a $250 special duty supplement based on the 10-month. I understand and participated in conversations with several council members today with regard to the possibility of increasing that. And certainly if council would like to do that, I appreciate that and wholeheartedly support that. And that's all I have, and we're available to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. It's a public hearing, which kind of caught me a little bit by surprise, but I'm all right with that. So I'll open the public hearing and see if there's any comments by the public here. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and then council, do you have questions of Randy? I know we've all discussed it, and I think we're prepared to move forward. Is that correct? All right?
Yep.
All right, prepared for a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance making additional appropriations for fiscal year 2021 in general fund for Federal CARES Act funding and utilization of unrestricted fund balance. And in addition, in the last whereas, change the amount per month from $25 to $75.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded, we do that, and that would bring the total amount of that to,
$750 based on a 10-month eligibility.
Roger. Okay. All right, I have motion made and seconded that we approve this. Final questions or comments of council? Okay, it should be an easy vote. Evie?
Thank you. Councilwoman Andrews?
Aye.
Councilman Canella?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman? Councilman Hux?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Mayor Hunt?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, very well. First item under new business is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a participation agreement with other members of the Eastern Virginia Regional Industrial Facility. And this is to basically to purchase 432 acres of land from the Commonwealth and lease 250 acres of that to KDC Solar for the purposes of a solar farm. And I understand we've got somebody here to introduce this to council, and then Steve Mead and Derek Perry. Would y'all like to address council
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, Mr. Manager. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Stephen Mead. Derek Perry is here with me tonight. He's going to assist with any questions. Derek is our primary staff for the EV RIFA. He's actually a City of Newport News employee, so we really appreciate him taking his time and being here tonight with us as well. You may remember we created the larger RIFA board, and I'm going to refer to it as the big board because it handles all of the projects, however many projects there are, and there can be any number for this type of authority. What we're here to talk to you about tonight is the first project, and it's started out, you might remember us talking about early on, back in 2018 when we were considering this, the unmanned systems project, which would be at the same location that we're talking about tonight. Well, the unmanned systems projects really has kind of gotten pushed to the side for the moment. It still might be something that goes forward, but it's going to require more work and more interest and discussion. So what we've done is shifted to really a land acquisition project for the first project. And what we're talking about doing is obtaining a piece of property that is owned by the state. It's been declared a surplus property. It's 432 acres, which used to be a Navy fuel farm, so it was a fuel depot. It is under a corrective action plan. If you see the red line that designates the area that's environmentally under the corrective action plan with DEQ, and that's been in place for a number of years. The really what it equates to at this point, the blue circles, and this is a very busy slide, so I'm going to try and tell you what all these colors mean, but the blue circles designate existing and remaining fuel tanks that are underground. But we also have monitoring wells that were put in to meet this cap and monitor the groundwater. And that's been coming down. They have very little active results from those now, and a number of those are going to go offline in the next 2 years, according to the Department of Environmental Quality. So what we're going to do, as you'll see, the KDC solar was mentioned, and the solar farm, the locations are shown in the yellow color here and the slanted lines. And as you can tell, they're not all bunched up right together. They're spread a bit, and that's primarily because of topography. This property does have a fair amount of topography to it. There's some ravines, and you'll see the magenta or kind of purple color here. It also has wetlands and environmental RPA impacts from Chesapeake Bay, so we're working around those. The existing property, the JYF property, is already in place. It's a 30,000 square foot building. I believe it's 30,000, Derek, is that right? And so what we'd be left with if we acquire this property, when EV RIFA acquires this property, we're focusing on the 17-acre and the 8-acre parcels on either side of that building. And that's because those are essentially market ready. They have utilities within easy reach, or utilities on that 8 acres is really right beside it and runs right past it. So those could be marketed immediately. So it gives EV RIFA a project where we can start marketing this for light industrial use and see if there's anyone who'd be interested in leasing that, building a building on it, or whether we could sell that property for those types of uses. I will tell you it has been the solar farm portion of this required a special use permit that has been fully approved by York County as the host locality. It also includes requirements that all of that equipment be removed at the end of the lease. So it'll go back to being, maybe not pristine property, but it will go back. All the equipment will be removed. It'll be essentially the same condition that it's in now. I should say, too, in case anyone's not as familiar with it, where this property is, if you take the Water Country exit and go to the right toward Cheatham Annex, that's where we're talking about. That's where the property is. So the big change in this project came when KDC Solar agreed to offer the full amount of its lease rental amounts up front. And that was important because the state had agreed through a governor budget amendment that the state would sell this property to EV RIFA for $1.35 million. That was still a lot of money to come up out of pocket, despite the fact that we've gone from 7 to 10 localities. Not everyone wanted to participate at that level. So KDC offered to pay its rent up front, in effect, and get a 37-year lease, in exchange for doing that. That's really important, and to me, it's probably the key for this project, the turning point, because it gives the ability for the localities who want to participate to take down this property with very little money up front. Initially, we thought we'd have to come up with about $1 million collectively, and here we've eliminated that completely. So the $1.35 million, nothing out of pocket to get to that point, which is important. In addition, KDC has agreed to pay about exactly $15,000 a year to offset some of the other costs, and primarily we're going to use that early on for offsetting the groundwater monitoring costs. Those are about $20,000 a year, so we'll get 15 additional thousand from KDC, leaving a net of about 5,000 that we have to cover ourselves through taking care of that on an operational basis. So essentially, you can get into this property for no money down, if you want to put it into car terms. The one thing about, so what happens at that point? The net revenues back out of the program after the project costs are covered are then shared back out and distributed to the participating localities. And that's really what we're asking each locality, including the city, to do tonight. You're already a member. You're going to remain a member. There's no bad effect if you don't want to do this project, but it's an opportunity for you to get into a project where we do now think there's going to be revenue, and there should be revenue fairly soon. There will be some revenues in later years once the solar farm is in place, and all the tax revenue from this is, York County has agreed that will go back to the EV RIFA as part of it, so there will be some additional revenues as well to offset operating costs. So the operating costs on the annual basis should be very minor. So what happens is if you want to participate in those localities who want to participate, you join to, you would vote for that, of course, and York County has approved it, their Board of Supervisors, and Isle of Wight has approved it, its Board of Supervisors, and there's 3 others to go after you to see whether they would be interested in going forward, and we have good indications from them that they all are going to pass it, but you're next in line, just by the way the calendar fell. So the one thing that's really important to note about this is that project participation, after you make this initial vote, if there's another piece to the project for something to be done, whether it's extending utilities, whether it's building a building, whether it's selling a piece of the property, that all requires unanimous approval. So if we end up with 5 localities or 6 localities participating, each one of you would get to vote on that, whether you want to participate. So we're not asking you to write a blank check, and that's really the reason. It may be a bit unwieldy from a management standpoint, but it gives the localities control over this project, and you don't have to worry about having to write a check without something that you've agreed to. And so that's, I think, one of the most critical points to understand as well. Revenue generated, it does go back, whether it's taxes, land sales, rent from something else. It goes 5% to the EV RIFA Big Board, 5% to the host locality, and then 90% is shared among the participating localities. So we can't determine exactly what those percentages are going to be yet, because we need to see who's going to participate and at what levels. But the revenue will go back in an aggregate proportion to what you put into the project. Let's see. Any questions about this slide? I know it's very busy.
I think I've only got one question, and it's overarching, so I'll ask that. As far as looking at the risk of those in-ground wells, and I know you got the monitoring, who's on the block if one of those does breach and start leaking?
Well, as property owner, the EV RIFA authority would be. And that's a great question. I should have mentioned this. The authority itself will hold title, and by statute, it has to hold title. And so, theoretically, the authority would be liable for all of that. The participation agreement has a provision that says only participating localities for the particular project, this project in this case, have liability for what happens and any liability going forward. So if there were to be a problem for that, we'd be, and really whoever's the property owner is liable under the CAP, the corrective action plan as well, and that's part of what is going with the property, kind of carries along with it. Now, having said all that, I think you said exactly right. The chance of that's very low from what we know. The DEQ has told us that you can build over top of these, or if they get someone who wants to take them out, there's no problem with removing them, just like you would another underground storage tank. You dig them out, remove it, backfill the soil, and it should be fine. They'd give us a closure letter for that particular tank.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay. So the second slide, not that many numbers here, but a couple of things to understand about what happens. A lot of this is kind of front-loaded because there's a lot, typical closing costs, appraisals, legal costs, miscellaneous closing costs like surveys and title searches and things like that have to be done. So the first year is about $32,750 for that, and then each year is about $38,500 on operating costs. Now, I will tell you that when staff was working through these numbers, those are extremely conservative, meaning we've put them much higher than we actually anticipate them to be. It also, as you look at these columns, does not include the $15,000, which you see about midway down the page, does not offset for that. So that will happen on each of these too. So for each of the years after the first year, the $38,500 is actually $23,500. okay? And that's going to be split among however many localities. But it's further reduced by those net revenues that I mentioned too. So when the solar facility is online, there would be more real estate taxes coming in. It would be taxed at a higher rate than unimproved property, of course. So those things are going to go. It's difficult to predict how the York County assessor will put those taxes, and so we didn't try to predict them. We just know that it's going to reduce further the amount that the localities would be asked to pay on an annual basis. So, but that's the really important thing to take from this is, the first year is higher because of that, and then each year after that breaks out, it should be, lower, and again, it should be getting lower too once we drop off the monitoring wells. So that's really all I have about that part of it. We're happy to answer any questions you have about the project itself or the EV RIFA in general.
Council, any questions?
Yeah, I think the Eastern Virginia Regional Industrial Authority, Facility Authority is a really good idea, okay? I just have one question, and maybe you said it and I didn't hear it because that mic is not working really well.
Okay.
But the area where you're going to put the solar panels, is that right now heavily wooded? Will you be cutting a lot of trees to do that?
It's a bit of a mix. There's a lot of kazoo out there, which is a little unusual for our area. So there are some trees. It's mostly what I would describe as underbrush. It's been cut before. Some of it has been trimmed, and there was several years ago, there was an attempt to put a golf course up there. And so some of it has been, cut and graded and filled, and it's pretty level and what you would expect if someone did a development. Other parts are pretty wild and has what I would call underbrush and understory type trees. There's not a lot of really large trees out there that would be cut, no sir.
Okay.
I had a question. There's 9 localities listed here. Are all 9 of those will be participating, or you anticipate will be participating in this?
No. Right now we've got York County and Isle of Wight who are committed. Newport News, Hampton, we're hoping the city, and Williamsburg are the ones that we expect to go forward.
Okay, so those costs, the $38,500 less the 15, would be divided by those
Correct.
6.
Yes.
Okay, assuming they all participate.
That's right.
Okay.
And it depends on what each one participates, the level that they put in, because that's up to each locality as well. You're going to make your decision tonight if you want to go forward, what amount you want to put in. And so each locality is doing the same thing, and we're not really telling them, they're telling us. And so we won't know that until we get to the end of all of them, exactly what the proportions will be.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I could,
Maria?
the minimum contribution to participate is $2,500, and that is what we're proposing if the council would like to move forward. It's not 6 entities divided by, into the number. York County, is my understanding, will support this. Anything that is not made up by the non-York County partners will be made up by York County as the host locality and the one with the most direct benefit and effect to it.
Right. They get the extra 5% as the host locality, so I guess that's a financial decision they'll make. All right. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question related to the question you asked about the low probability of tank failure that we may be responsible for. Is any insurance available to protect the participants in the event that something like that should occur?
I don't know the answer to that, but we can certainly check into it. I would suspect the answer is no, because we have a closed file from DEQ. I mean, it's under a corrective action plan, but so long as that's complied with, no further action would be taken. And the way my understanding, and certainly say I'm not an expert, but my understanding is the insurance would not be available in that situation. But we can certainly check into that. Derek and I will ask about that and report back. And I should say I was remiss. Councilman Hux and the Vice Mayor Freeman are both members of the big board, RIFA board, and have put a lot of time into it. They've had to hear about this more than they want to probably, but we can certainly report back to you at that meeting if that's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Meade. I do appreciate that. And I'd also like to ask our city attorney, Mr. Wayne Moore, his opinion of this project, if I could.
The agreement is certainly well drafted, and I think it puts forth the position as expressed to you. And I certainly have no reservations as far as the legality and the way it's doing it.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Before I move forward to take a motion, Derek, I know you took your evening. Did you want to address council at all?
Thanks, Steve, covered it very well.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Derek. All right. Council, how would y'all like to proceed?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a participation agreement with other participating members of the Eastern Virginia Regional Industrial Facility Authority for the purchase of approximately 432 acres of land from the Commonwealth of Virginia and to lease approximately 250 acres of the same to KDC Solar LLC for purposes of the development of a solar farm.
Second.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we approve the resolution and allow our city manager to enter into this agreement. Questions or comments of council? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask Evie to call the roll.
Thank you. Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Hux,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews, Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, very well. Next item on the agenda is a resolution making appointments to the Economic Development Authority. I understand there's going to be a motion to defer.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we postpone this until we have some qualified applications, as we have none at this time.
I want to make it clear to the public, we have none. Not that you weren't qualified, we have no applications. Okay. Just make that clear. All right, that being said, did somebody second that?
Second.
Okay. All right, motion made and second that we postpone this resolution. Evie?
Certainly. Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Councilman Hux,
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
All right, comments of the city manager. Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'll have more items than normal, but I promise to be brief. First, I just want to say thank you to the members of council for your vote this evening with regard to hazard pay and related for our employees. They certainly deserve it, and they will certainly appreciate it, as do I. So thank you for that. A couple of notes. I just wanted to let you know we got the invoice today for work completed. We've completed the first 50 or so of the street light / school light, LED light, energy efficient upgrade project, something that you helped us prime the pump with in February or March, and it took a little extra time because of COVID, but the first 50 are done.
Great.
And we will continue on. Also, as council is aware, as we went back into open to the public status in June from the temporary close of the public status, we've opened up most things, but we incrementally opened the library. So the next increment will be beginning the second Saturday in October. We'll resume Saturday hours. It was one day we were keeping it not in operation to allow time for cleaning and other things, but we think we've got that taken care of. So we'll begin Saturday operations to help to support those that are learning at home as well. We've gotten some requests for additional space and capabilities there. So we'll begin that 1 to 5 that Saturday and all Saturdays following that. Another question that we've gotten recently, I wasn't going to bring this up today, but I'm going to because we continue to get questions about it. With regard to Halloween, I've heard anecdotally different communities thinking different things about Halloween, but absent a directive from an executive order from the governor, at least at the staff level, we're not anticipating doing anything different relating to community Halloween with a couple of exceptions. One is to remind folks that the Centers for Disease Control has put out guidelines for people to think about as they participate in things like Halloween, Thanksgiving celebrations, Christmas celebrations, the like, and that's there, and I would encourage people to look at it. But beyond that, we're doing a couple of things, and it's premature, but I'm gonna tell you about them now, and then Dave and probably Gretchen will be back at your next meeting to talk about it more. But we know that that not everyone's going to feel comfortable doing traditional trick-or-treating. Not all the homes that traditionally participate are going to feel comfortable, et cetera. So Dave and his team are working on some increased programming for particularly the parents and children with young families. And it will be it'll be a home delivered kind of Halloween concept, kind of like we worked with home delivered library books for a while, and still are in certain cases, as well as some partnerships with the library to have some televised and YouTube offerings that are appropriate, Halloween offerings appropriate for young children and young families to do together. So we are working to continue to find different ways to work through COVID-19, and I salute Dave and his team. And they're going to come back at the next meeting with the details, along with telling how folks that might want to help can help with that. Because we have no budget for it. We just thought it up, and collectively ourselves we'll figure out how to do it. But there are going to be plenty of opportunities to help, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Yep, that's certainly exciting to hear, so and I appreciate that. Buddy, as you do your comments, can you make, we've alluded to it, that we don't have any appointments possible for the Economic Development Authority. Would you kind of talk to the background issue and what you did today?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I took the liberty of calling our Senator Tommy Norman this morning and talked to him for quite a while. And I put forth the idea to him if he would be willing to put forth a bill to the legislature to exempt cities of 25,000 citizens or less from this requirement to fill out the economic statement. And he seemed to be all for it, and he said he'd put his staff to working towards it. I would like to see if the council agrees. I'd also like to send a letter to the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, and our local representatives, asking them for the same thing and send it certified so they'll have to sign for it and we know they got it.
I like that.
Okay.
So
that's basically it. But the opposition is, and the reason that the 4 people resigned from the Economic Development Authority is because of the requirement to fill out the economic statement. And I can understand it. Some of those people just don't want all of their stuff out there in the public, and I don't blame them. I understand for elected officials it's necessary, and I certainly don't mind doing it. Well, I'll take that back. I mind doing it, but I will do it to remain an elected official, and I think that's where it should stop, is elected officials. Everybody else is a volunteer. They don't get paid, so why should they put out their economic information?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else? I didn't mean to just shoehorn you into that. Do you have something else?
No, that's it.
Okay. All right, Councilman Hux.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to welcome our new library staff employee, Ms. Heather Wright. I'd like to thank Mr. Daniel Anderson from BB&T Bank, right here in Poquoson, for being here tonight. Thank you so much to Mr. Derek Perry and Mr. Steve Mead from the RIFA. Another fine job on your presentations, and we thank you very much for that. I'd like to thank the city staff for all their efforts here lately with the CARES Act money handling. So fine job on that. I'd also like to thank retired police captain Percy Ward for serving as interim police chief. So thank you to all those folks. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very well. Councilman Canella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing this evening, and Councilman Green's suggestion made me think of it. If y'all remember, it may have been our August meeting, we had to increase some fees here in the city, and I talked to a couple of you about reaching out to Delegate Mugler to see if she would be interested in introducing legislation to allow us to advertise online and to various other outlets that would not require us to use the newspaper. And she thought it was a good idea and agreed. And she sent me a drafted bill, a copy this week that I've shared with Randy and Graham, and they combed through the intricacies of it and thought it would certainly address our issues. So, good Lord willing, that bill will hopefully get somewhere in the General Assembly in the spring, and maybe that give us the power to do away with those fees and that burden on our citizens. So, just a little update. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilwoman Andrews.
I don't have anything additional.
All right. Councilman Sutton.
Yeah, I'd like to second the comments, especially the ones Buddy made and Councilman Hux. I think what they said is absolutely true. I look forward to that letter going out. I'd also like to, at the same time, encourage everyone at home listening and everyone here to consider volunteering to serve on some of the boards and commissions. Okay, we don't have 4 people to put on the EDA right now, and that's a shame. Okay, we have the greatest city in the state of Virginia, probably the best city in the United States. Okay, but the people need to make a better effort to support their government. Okay, and so I encourage everybody to make out the applications. Also do second the comment of welcoming our new employee, Heather. And I would like to thank Councilwoman Jana. Okay, our CARES Act funding was a little bit better because of an idea that she had, and she talked to all of us before we had the meeting, and we adjusted it appropriately, and she did a good job on that. So thank you, Jana. You did a great job on that. And one other thought, I'd like to express sympathy to the Clark family. Our treasurer, Mr. Clark's father passed away, Bill Clark. The Clark family has supported the city over many, many years, back to the time when I was a kid. Stephen is in the treasurer's office now. His mama has a memorial to her outside the library. She was a great supporter of the library. And Bill Clark served various committees for the city for many, many years, and he passed away last week. So I'd like to add my condolences to that family.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Freeman, anything out there?
Only that I wanted to emphasize we do need people for boards and commissions. Councilman Southall covered that, so nothing additional.
Okay. And I don't have anything else this evening, so there motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, did we have a consensus to send those letters?
I believe we did. I didn't hear any argument about them.
All right.
And I'm okay with the certified letter. I was wondering, did you need to certify your letter, but I was good not to. Sounds like you got it. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Okay. Evie, please.
Certainly. Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Hux,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
All right, very well. We're adjourned. Thank you.